elected. And no matter how you look at it, it's based on social and individual thought. I was listening to the news today, and I see President Biden is addressing the United Right comment that was made by the former president.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I thought to myself, it would be the United Right versus civil rights. And I think that the Constitution of the United States of America is about equality and justice for all. And so that's why it's important that we understand civic engagement. We understand the value of learning about each candidate, not just what you see on television, but what you have learned in the background. And you look at the programs that they may have administered while in office. And I think if we do it that way, then we will be much more aware of the right person to put in office. And I'll toss in one more: social media. If you really are interested in participating in government and in the election, uh, go to your computers, read what's on there,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure that you understand reality from fake news. And like I said, talk to other people, do your homework, study, and then when you get to the ballot box, vote for who you think the best person is. But we haven't been doing that quite recently in one of the elections not too long ago, and we got what we got. So I think it's important that we educate ourselves and move forward from that direction.
Well, one of the things we're going to have to that we're running into problems with now is that with our young people, and I'm not just talking about young blacks. I'm talking about young people in general, the 20 somethings and the early 30 somethings, on their view of Biden and what he hasn't done. Okay, not looking at what he has done, but looking at what he hasn't done. And it really bothers me. And I'll be honest with you, it bothers me that the young people don't really understand how government works. You know, you can look at it. You know, you look at the campus protests.
Mhm.
They can keep spinning their wheels all they want to, but telling the president of the university and the board of trustees what to do is just not going to work. Okay, you know, and I know they had the backing of some teachers. You know, the teachers. You know, I think they took a vote of confidence on the president of Columbia University. You know, that this stuff is like getting rid out of hand because they just don't. A lot of times, I believe they just don't understand how things get done. You know, and to hear some of the comments our young people are making about, hey, Biden isn't doing this, Biden is doing that. I'm not going to vote. Or either I'll take my chance with the other guy. It's very disheartening because they don't understand. It's not like Biden can pull a rabbit out of his hat. Okay, he can't do that, and I think that's what they're looking for. So, what they're going to do, I guess they want to uh, just pull out of the elections for this year and let the chips fall where they may.
Which is a grand, it's a grave mistake.
It is.
Um,
It is.
yeah, those of us that have studied history, like yourself and myself, and those before us, realize the value of the vote. They realize the history behind that vote. They realize that people like George Henry White of North Carolina, for example, who rose to be one of the first elected to U.S. Congress on the Republican side, however, from North Carolina, a black man that was born during slavery and pursued his education the best he could to rise and become a lawyer, and then was selected to do some other things in politics that made his name well known throughout the country. If it hadn't been for people coming together, understanding the importance of the vote during a time when the Klan was running rampant against people of color and America was segregated, if the people had not come together, then he would not have been voted to Congress. They don't understand that our history has in this nation, no matter how you look at it, has been one of always climbing from the bottom to the top. And the only reason we've reached the top is because we knew our history at one point, and we knew that it took everybody working together to be able to see a brighter day in America. And it's still that way today. And when you turn your back, in my opinion, a retired military officer who served 30 years, a Vietnam veteran who served in the war on drugs in Central and South America and in other places around the world, when you turn your back on the president at an African American school or anywhere else, and show that disdain, then I think it's just embarrassing, because evidently we are not teaching our young people to respect the institution of democracy in America and to respect the rights of others. I didn't like it. I'll just say it point blank, and I think they need to go back and study it in their history books.
But that's what they're not doing, And I'll be honest with you, hey, look, I'm all for the young people having their brilliant minds at work, having thoughts on different situations, but they need to analyze and stuff. I was kind of disappointed in the men of Morehouse. Some of those comments some of those young men made, and they just don't get it. But they'd be the first ones crying the blues if the old guy gets reelected. When you have a chance, not even have to go down that road with the mess he's going to create, and just vote Biden back in. You don't know what the next 4 years is going to bring. None of us can look in a crystal ball and determine what the next 4 years is going to be about. So we need to give him the opportunity to go in there and attempt to get some things done. First thing they got to realize, you can't tell another man how to run this country or another lady how to run that country, okay? You can make suggestions. You can cut off the aid to them, but you still can't go there and dictate to them what they're going to do. Does the Prime Minister of Israel need to go? Yeah, he needs to go. Is wreaking havoc in Gaza the thing to do? No, because you're killing so many people. But at the same time, Israel has an opportunity. They have the right to defend themselves, and they need to come up with a plan better than what they're doing now, just fighting off just jumping up and just fighting, okay, to cut down some of those casualties. But Biden can't call the prime minister and say, look, this is what you're going to do from now on. This is how we want you to do it. I saw an article today. I didn't get to read it. It was just talking about how the United States is not that beacon, of light anymore. They can just call a country up and tell them what to do, and they do it.
Gunboat diplomacy doesn't work. Because you can make more enemies that way, and rather than making allegiance. We've already fought that war. People need to understand also that World War II saw a segregated America go into the war due to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which drew us into the conflict with Italy, China, Japan, and Germany, which means we were fighting on three fronts. To start out with, I often say we were fighting on three fronts. We were fighting the imperialist Navy. We were fighting the fascism, and we were fighting Nazism, only to win that war and then come back home and have to fight the war on racism. So, but we didn't come back home. History tells us the same way we left. We came back home a stronger people. We came back home willing to fight for what was right. We came back home for seeing politics for what it was and who was running for office and who made a difference and who didn't. But our eyes were open when we came home from Germany. What has happened in the last couple of generations, in the last generation, is somewhere we have dropped the ball when it comes to having pride in America, realizing that this really is, in my book, the greatest country on earth. I have been in those third world countries as a military man. I have traveled the globe. I have seen how other people live, and I can tell you, it made me have a greater appreciation for the country I live in, even with all its faults, Mr. Kearney. We're not a perfect nation. We're not a perfect union. But I tell you what, I sleep peacefully at night. I can work as much as I want to in my life. I have food on the table. My family has peace. We cannot go into another country. We understand and invade and tell them what to do. A country is one that has clear boundaries. and they are the master of their boundaries. The only thing we can do in most cases is suggest or recommend. So it's not his fault when certain things, the president of the United States' fault when certain things happen in other countries and you don't like the way it looks in that sovereign territory.
And that's probably happening because that's how they view government. They want Biden to go in, do what he has to do, create a ceasefire, push Israel out of Gaza, and call it a day. And it's just not going to work that way, young people. It's not going to. You can cry until the cows come home, yell until the cows come home. It still is no. It's still not going to happen that way, and that's disappointing because I don't think none of them read the 2025 plan that the
Plan
that
25.
guy
Yeah.
has along with his other people. I started reading it the other day because someone sent it to me. I had kind of glanced at it, but I said,
Yeah.
let me just start reading it. Man, I was teaching Sunday school Sunday, and we were talking about. I said, "Let's shoot. We might as well just go on back out in the cotton fields and just start picking cotton again, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where they're pushing us at now."
Yeah, that Plan 25 too is an expansion of the Southern strategy.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you look at the gains that has been made over the last since 1865 and 18 at the end of Civil War, and you look at the gains that were made between 1865 and 1877 during Reconstruction, when African American blacks were elected to Congress, reckoned to the House of Representatives, reckoned to be sheriff of cities and counties, and the backlash came, uh, saying that this would never happen again. Well, what did that do? It gave introduction to the rise of the Southern strategy, which
Mm-hmm.
was also a strategy of Richard Nixon and Lee Atwater. And that anybody that wants to know a little bit more about the Southern strategy, just look it up. Southern Strategy by Richard Nixon and Lee Atwater. It's there on the internet. But as they say about us, if you want them to know about it, put it in writing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you that it exists. Go back and look at it. And that program 25 is an expansion of that, but it's really, really a more threatening expansion of the Southern strategy, because what it does is really profess the taking away of rights that have been gained since 1965. The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, it attacks both of those. And I really encourage people to read that, because it really has a following, and it's something that we need to be aware of. What is that saying? To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So we have to really arm ourselves to know what the other side is thinking when it comes to the what I call the dark side of America.
Very true. Very true. Because we're not. I think a lot of people, take what the Republican so-called think tank is doing as a joke, and I don't think they need to take that as a joke. They need to read and learn and go out in these red states and make sure all their relatives are voting, so we can turn this electoral college around, which needs to go. I mean, sooner or later, electoral college needs to be stricken down and removed. But we just don't get it. I tell you, we just don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
Mhm.
what problems we're going to have if this guy gets back in the office. And
Well, the thing is not to be bamboozled,
mm-hmm,
because talk is cheap, and I'm hearing on the news all the time that uh, uh, the black male support for the current president has dropped, but the black male support for the former president has risen. And
mm-hmm,
if those statistics are true to form, we need to be in our communities teaching about the backlash of Reconstruction. We need to be talking about what it took to be able to even get to the Brown versus the Board education, which theoretically ended desegregation in this nation. We need to be reading about the students at North Carolina A&T who took it upon themselves to set in at the Woodworth counter so that they could protest against Jim Crow and and anti-American sentiment that was running rampant throughout America at that time. They need to know that the struggle happened because of the division in this country, and that it still continues today. But it's going to get even worse if we don't stand up for education, if we don't stand up for unity, and if we don't stand up to moving forward as close to one as possible. I know we're not going to have a one, but as close to one as possible, so that we all gain in some way. I also tell them this, Mr. Kearney, go back and study the meaning of fascism. Go back and study the meaning of imperialism. Go back and study the meaning of Nazism, and those that and go back and study the meaning of communism and socialism. So once you start studying those things and you compare it to a democracy and what we stand for in this country, I think you'll have a totally different view of who we are as Americans, who we are African Americans, and the direction we need to choose when we go to the voting polls.
Very
Dr.
true.
Jula, I'm going to jump in real quick because I had a quick question for you because I was teasing Reggie earlier because I was hearing some of the press conferences. I was actually in a couple of press conferences and interviews. I heard the Post interview, but I also on one of the networks. But I also saw that in the NRA, your good buddy, the Orange Man, is saying that he wants a third term. And I know constitutionally you can't have a third term, but he's already floating that idea out and everything. So I just wanted your take that if he is elected, will he try to do some runaround on the political front and try to get himself into either a third term or maybe even declare himself emperor?
I would not be surprised because we have seen the direction and heard the rhetoric and acknowledged some of the things he said that would pass passed. And I would not be surprised at anything we would see should he be reelected. I think that once again that we need to do our homework because we don't need to turn back uh, through uh, the next president all we have gained over the last 100 years. We
I
don't
hear
need
you
to
on that
lose
and
that
everything.
because it has made America much stronger, and it has given more rights to the people. Now we start to see Roe versus Wade being reversed. Who was that reversed by? It was reversed by people appointed by number 45.
Mhm.
We're starting to see NRA and others that advocate uh, for the First Amendment right, which I agree with. I died for the right to keep our First Amendment right in place, and the Second Amendment. But at the same time, we don't need more guns on the street. We need more control in one way or another. Because ghost guns, illegal guns, guns coming from everywhere, no one knows where they're coming from. They're really, really wiping out a lot of the minority community. And when you take away those, when you take away the laws that would be a controlling factor, well, you're just opening up the door for more chaos. And I just saw where our former president was on TV giving a speech to the NRA and advocating for more votes for that. And it just scares me to see the direction that we're going in because I love this country. I didn't spend 30 years in the military for nothing, and I certainly don't want it to be in vain.
Yeah. Speaking of
Like I
things
said,
that are scary and all along those lines, what's your take when we got some folks, some people might call them Uncle Toms or maybe even Uncle Tims, that are thinking about being either his vice president or out there touting his acclaim? Because, I'm here in North Carolina and we got this crazy lieutenant governor that's trying to be governor and all along those lines. So, what's your take when you're hearing some of the rhetoric? Because, I mean, he's even said some things, Mr. Robertson, that folks would say is anti-Semitic, and then we've also just recently got this kicker who's not one of us that is said some very anti-women things, and all along those lines. That being the kicker from Kansas City. So I just wanted your take on some of these folks that are being bold in what they are willing to say, and maybe even wanting a job in the administration.
Well, me personally, I see it as political ignorance. And a lot of folks would probably say, "Wow, that's an insulting remark to somebody." No, if you know what they should have taught you in school, ignorance just means that you just don't know. So when I say political ignorance, you don't know the result of what you're doing if it comes to pass. You don't know the impact it's going to have on the people that have to come under that new regime. You don't know, and two, the direction that they're really going to take, because I think we have been bamboozled when it came to some things. And I just don't want that to happen again. But I think, to me, I call it political ignorance, because they don't understand the value of the civil rights move to get us where we're at. They don't understand the value of Percy versus Plessy versus Ferguson. They don't understand the value of Brown versus Board of Education, the role that A. Philip Randolph took in getting the March on Washington organized, so Dr. King and those could risk their lives to go up and speak on this becoming one nation under God, and advocating for the people of color and women across the board. They don't understand that type of thing. If they did, then I think that the way that they would vote, some of the rhetoric I'm hearing that I just don't agree with, would not be there. So I think it calls for a broader education when it comes to civil rights, civil engagement, politics, right across the board, African American studies, History 101. So I just think it's the lack of knowledge and political ignorance that's causing them to do that.
Well, like I said, when you have your young college folks digging their heels in, and don't care which direction the country goes and who runs it, we got issues, we got problems, and they're gonna have to learn the hard way.
Well, Mr. Kearney, you're absolutely right. I agree with you 110%. But at the same time, how are you going to do that when they're taking civics out of the school classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
when they're taking African American studies out of the classrooms, when they're taking those classes that would teach morality and values and things of that nature, prayer, out of the classroom? So if you don't get it in the classroom, where are you going to get it?
On the street.
On the street. But Dr. Dula, there's a major event, you kind of alluded to it, that is celebrating a milestone anniversary. And I'm afraid that there's a lot of folks that don't even know what that particular bill was about and how it could impact their lives, because it is actually 70 years old today and everything. Because definitely Brown versus Board of Education was implemented some 70 years ago, but folks probably don't even know what year was implemented or what it was about. Would you agree with me on that, Dr. Dula?
I agree with you, because it was just celebrate 70 years. I think, wasn't it on Monday? I think
it was Monday.
And, I taught African American studies for a number of years. And one of the things that I taught was the fact that you can't have any peace without unity. Why? Because you're not a solid block to be able to advocate for your own justice and equality. And that's what we saw in Dr. King, since most of the people that will probably see that know the name of Dr. King, but they don't know that it took them working together in the churches when it evolved to the SCLC, and then it evolved to the streets to teach people how to sit in, how to march with peace, how to be nonviolent. It didn't just happen. I mean, it was an education process. Civics is an education process. Civil engagement is an education process. Civil rights is an education process. So if you're not getting it in the school systems to at least learn the basic foundations of what those things are, you're not going to get it in the community, because most of the people out here don't know what it is. And so that's why I spoke to Mr. Kearney and said, I am willing to talk to anybody, to teach any class in any community about 435 people been in the House of Representatives, about each state having 2 senators. Well, what do you mean 2 senators? 2 U.S. senators. That's different from a state senator. That's what we need to get across. So they won't understand the value of a person of color running for the U.S. Senate, because they don't understand what the U.S. Senate is and the value it has in our lives when it comes to picking the right party, the right people, to ensure that your opinions and your values are expressed and are taken care of at the highest level of government. They don't understand that there's 3 branches: legislative, okay, the ones that confirms and make law, the executive recommends the laws. And you can't go into another country, Mr. Kearney, and make a law. You can't even go into another country as president and tell them what to do without congressional approval. That's why in the Ukraine, they're having a very difficult time getting the funds available to be able to buy weapons for Ukraine. Why? Because the purse strings are fall under the U.S. Congress.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know these things, the power that each holds, then, like, I agree with Mr. Kearney, you're going to say some very ignorant things because you don't understand the process that takes place to be able to see things happen. And they don't always happen because the president does this and says, okay, here we go. Now, he does have what War Powers Act for 90 days, but after that, it still takes an act of Congress. So
Exactly, Congress to do that and everything. Hey, Reggie and Dr. Dooley, just really quickly along those same lines, I know some of my brothers and sisters get frustrated when they hear that the other minorities are sometimes going toward the Republican side as well. And I know that that is not a monolithic group because there is a difference between, say, a Cuban and somebody from Belize, or even somebody from Thailand and somebody from India. But what is your take when you're seeing a lot of these ethnic minorities or fellow ethnic minorities that are going down the Republican path? Because I know even in Florida, there are a number of Hispanics that are going toward for Trump and going for these very conservative values.
and that is something that just really gets to me. I don't understand it either. I do know that most of those in the Hispanics in Florida are coming from Cuba, which is a communist country, and the former president has shown shades of dictatorship and favoritism to communist countries and things of that nature. I don't know if it's that, or if they just, since they're in a Republican state, they're just going with the party line. But it's probably falling somewhere in the middle, because I do know the stance on the border in Texas has been very, a lot of strong rhetoric coming from the Democratic Party about controlling the border down there in a stronger way. And I know that those are Hispanics that's fleeing their countries, in various countries in South America. I know because I was in those countries. I was down there with President Clinton's team, and got to go to places like El Salvador and Colombia and Honduras and work with the State Department. And I saw all this. I saw the gangs in some of the countries. I saw the drug trafficking in those countries. And then I came back home, and when I hear that those very ones that would like to limit coming into the country by a certain people, then it just perplexes me when they jump on the bandwagon of the very person that's trying to stamp them out. More, I think that should be our next topic.
Right. I think one of the other things is too, most of them, the majority of them come to the country for jobs. Okay.
Mhm.
I was at a restaurant Saturday night, my wife and I, and maybe years ago, maybe just a year ago, probably the workforce was pretty diverse. Okay. Then Saturday night, I was looking around. I told my wife, I said, you know something? This restaurant only hires Hispanics now to do the work. I saw one black waiter, and like I said, they come to our country for jobs. So I'll ask my wife, I said, now what kind of jobs are we holding there? What are we doing to create, wealth or have money in our pockets? When you see how restaurants are just blandly, crossing us off and just hiring one segment of the population, and so I think that's one of the things we got to address. I mean, you can't tell businesses who to hire or not to hire, but I think it puts us as a people at a disadvantage when, the service jobs, we can't even hardly get in there because, and I'm pretty sure some of these privately owned companies are, skirting the law when they hire these people and how they pay them and what they do and what they don't do. Okay. I'm pretty sure that you can find it if you go through their books and stuff, but that's one of the things we got to figure out too. Yes, we have always been a melting pot. We have always allowed people into our country, but the disruption it causes for us, how is that going to be handled?
And I know that if I was a business owner, I would be looking for that person that is a good character, has a great work ethic, and I can bring them in with, and they're going to give me the best that they have to give. And like you said, many of the folks that Hispanics are good people. They fled their country and left everything behind. Their families were displaced because they came here because they wanted to have a decent job and the ability to get ahead in life
Hmm.
without threat of life every day. And so they come here with a great work ethic. And I know a lot of Hispanics. And I've met a lot of them who are new to the country over the years, and they're skilled. They're more than ready to offer great quality customer service, and not create any waves, but do a good job wherever they're at. On the other side of the coin, we reached a plateau in our country. I would say somewhere between the 60s and the 90s. That plateau being that I'm willing to work to make a living, an honest living. I will work hard because I want to be in the middle class or so and be able to raise my family with clear conscience and by the sweat of my brow. Now I have seen too many, not all, too many that feel working a janitorial job is below them. Too many working, feeling that being a restaurant servant is below them. Too many that feels like that being a street sweeper is below them. And somewhere we have lost the value of working hard for the honest dollar each day. And we've turned to the streets to do other things. And we have to go back and reclaim that value that your grandparents and parents put in you, Mr. Kearney, and my grandparents and parents put in me. That it is according to the work of your brow. That's how we should be operating. And what is that old saying? Honest days work for honest days pay.
Pay, yeah,
Yeah, we need to get back to that. Doesn't matter how much you make all the time. It just
right.
depends on how much heart are you going to put into what you're
Hmm.
doing.
Yeah.
And I do see the Hispanic men and women coming here with a lot of heart and giving businesses what they want.
Hmm.
On the other side of the coin, what do you see on TV? TV has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
When you look at TV, there's a level of educated mistrust that has taken place in this country when they see a young black man walk in with a mask on and a hoodie.
Hmm.
And a lot of times that works against us. That works against us because TV has painted a certain image.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what does that do? That affects employment.
Hmm.
People are looking, who would I rather hire?
Hmm.
Someone that struggled to get here and go give me a honest day's work for an honest day pay, or someone that I'm seeing on TV robbing and carjacking, and we just see a lot of that. And I see Mr. Lee said, "Wait a minute, got to come back
No,
and get it."
I had a question for you about that, Dr. Dula, because I know that even in Texas and other places that there's been a lot of pressure because we do know that sometimes people don't always want their identity known and all in that space. So a lot of these states are taking a very reactionary approach toward the protests and all along those lines. Because I know that there have been a couple places. I think Texas just implemented. I know they're talking about implementing it here in North Carolina, which is basically that you can't wear a mask, even though technically I think we're still uh, somewhat in the pandemic, even though we're probably out of it to some degree and everything. But they're saying that you can't wear the mask out in public because they're afraid that you might be part of these protest groups. So they're kind of like having this reactionary reaction. So I just wanted your take on that because when I saw that going on here in North Carolina, I think it's taking place in Texas. It might even be taking place in Florida where they're sitting there going like, "No, you can't wear no mask because you might be part of a protest group," and all in that space. But what's your take on that?
I my grandson is 21 years old, getting ready to turn 22, and for Christmas, uh, he received gifts of hoodies and nice hoodies, name brand, so forth and so on. And I told him, I said, "Look, let me tell you something. When you go into a mall or a store, make sure that hood is not on your head because TV has portrayed that in such a negative way
Hmm.
with those that are carjacking and killing and gang banging." And I said, "And you're not that kind of person." And he works very hard in the hospitality industry, but he's still a 21-year-old black man. So I pulled him aside and I looked at him eye to eye, and he understood what I was saying. My take is this: uh, it infringes. I feel it does infringe upon our civil rights when they tell us how to dress all the time, especially out in public. I may be wearing that mask because I have a cold, I'm coughing, I have allergies, and things of that nature. So I just don't think it's constitutional to make a mandate against wearing it at all times out in public. However, I think that in our culture, we need to start telling our young men and our young women, you're getting a negative portrait on TV. It's cast all over the United States. People are getting a negative image of you. Pull your pants up, please. Make sure that if you don't need the mask, don't wear it into a store or into a mall. Take the hood off your head when you go into a business. I think there's just some things that we need to accept ourselves, and parents should be spreading this message to their children uh, because it does paint an ugly picture. When you see some people going in and busting jewelry counters with masks and hoods on and things of that nature, but it's an appropriate place to wear them, both appropriate time, and it's an inappropriate place to wear them at an inappropriate time. But I don't like just a mandate to say, Mr. Lee, you can't wear it in public. Mr. Kearney, you can't wear it in public ever. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we got 13 more minutes left. So when we're gonna start our African American History Academy up here in this area?
We're going to start that now. I have been talking to people throughout Prince George's County who came to me and said that one of our problems is that old saying, we don't know where we came from, so we have no idea where we're going. And as you heard me say earlier, I had taught African American studies for a number of years and interjected just a few things tonight that I hope have whet a few appetites. But I would be willing to talk about African American studies anywhere, anytime. I've talked around the world on African American studies, which is Black history. I've led Black history programs around the world as well. Most of those are on military bases. I had an opportunity to talk with Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry and do speeches with him down throughout in Georgia. I also had the opportunity to speak in the 70s with Hosea Williams, who was at the Pettus Bridge with Lewis. And many people don't know that he was a military man. But when he came home, he stopped at a restaurant that didn't allow him to eat in that restaurant. And they beat him within an inch of his life while he was wearing an American uniform, just returned from the war. And so these are things that we need to teach our folks, that you have not always had the easiest ride in America, and it's always taken hard work just to gain a little bit. And if we lose it now, it will probably be gone forever. Because Mr. Kearney, you're the last generation. You're the last generation. I'll say that again. You're an evolutionary elder, sir, which means that you have evolved to this point because your grandparents taught you something, your parents taught you something, and you learned your history. Now you know what you have to do to get ahead and make an honest, decent living, and to raise your family right here in the state of Maryland in a honest way. We need to teach that to our children. We need to let them know that people like Dr. King just didn't happen. People like Malcolm X just didn't happen. The Black Panthers just didn't happen. They need to know that Black Panthers came about because the government was not taking care of folks in the city.
Yeah, they had social programs.
Yeah.
They were feeding the kids. That's what they were doing.
And teaching the Constitution. Said it's all right to carry guns. It's in the Constitution. Well, if it hadn't been for a person by the name of J. Edgar Hoover who said, we're going to label them enemy number one. Why? Yeah. Because they're Black people carrying guns.
That's right.
In your history, anytime a Black man carried a gun, they wrote a law against it. Go back and check the laws. Anytime they carried the guns, they wrote a law against it. And I'm not saying it's always good to carry guns and oozes and things of that nature, but I'm just saying you need to know how history evolved to get us to the point we're at now. And so that's why in many states where you have African Americans carrying guns, you look at the laws on the books, and it is a law against it. So we need to know that stuff. We need to know what's legal. we need to know why the Black Panthers were labeled to be a bad terrorist type group and killed in their sleep when the Ku Klux Klan was allowed to roam wild and
Yeah.
kill blacks and hang blacks and things of that nature. And like I said, I'm a civil rights baby. Born in the 1940s, came up, desegregated, marched, sat on the first school desegregation bus. I saw America evolving. Now I see it regressing, and that really, really bothers me.
And we are. I mean, you looking, this year I've been working as a long-term sub because I got tired of sitting at home doing stuff that I can do at home, and I'm glad summertime's coming so I can catch up on my reading and stuff like that. But the schools, and I think here in this county it's because of the fact that this is a majority county. A lot of white families have left this county. The schools, the school I'm in is probably 80-90%, minority. And things are changing, and I think a lot of people are moving into, like, if they're staying in Maryland, they moving to St. Mary's and Cary County, the western part of the state, the eastern part of the state, the northern part of the state, so they can feel like they can live their lives like, as Magnus and everything, or either they moving out of the state into the red states and everything, and that's one of the problems. And if we're not careful, we're going to see a slipping of this country. Yes, Brown versus Board of Education, but look at the schools now. They're more integrated now. I mean, more segregated now than they were when I was coming up. And I was part of the 1968 integration in North Carolina. So we've got to come up with a plan that, and I think it should be done, monthly in a building, and get as many people in there as you can, and start teaching our kids about Black history. And that was another thing the Black Panthers were doing. They were teaching them about the history, okay? They were teaching the kids about the history, and they were doing good, But like you said, the little J. Edgar Hoover, he saw things different, but they were doing what they were supposed to do. So I think we need to get back to, like you said, we need to get back to the roots of where we came from, and teach these young people. Because I guarantee you right now, half these young people, if you ask them about who was Paul Robeson, they can't tell you.
They can't tell you who Jack Johnson was.
No.
They can't tell you who A. Philip Randolph was.
No.
They can't tell you a lot of things about our history other than Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
But no, some of them can't even tell you that.
No, well, wow, where have they been? But
the parents don't enforce it anymore. They don't talk to them.
Yeah. So I think you're right. We need to go ahead and get this thing running. And between you and I, we can have some discussions. And Mr. Lee, we drag him in from Carolina because we're from Carolina, and let's get this network going. It might be a start by social media. And signing up people to do what you're doing here, and encourage them to join in once a month or bi-monthly or however it should be, and then evolve to the point that we start doing it in our communities. I have people waiting to do this. They're calling me. I ran into a student of mine. I taught African American studies at Crossland High School here in Prince George's County. And a student of mine says, parents come up and tell me all the time, my son or my daughter was in your class, and that was their favorite class. And I said, well, I tried to teach them the truth. So now I'm hearing about them being successful as commissioners and elected officials and engineers, and that's what came out of this. A 4 classes under that tutelage that the young people got the message. And now they looked me up on the internet and they called me and said, hey, I still remember you talking about Queen Nzinga and Mansa Musa and the others that really made a mark in history as a Black people. So I hear this all the time. That's why I know it's important that we bring this back. If we don't, then like I said, Mr. Kearney, you're the last generation.
Yeah, yeah. We got to get it right. We got to get it right, and too much stuff is on the line for us not to get it right.
And we need
So
to get our churches back online too. I know back during the '60s, the civil rights movement was waged through
the
the
churches.
churches, and I mean every church had something, SCLC or
Mm-hmm.
NAACP, or they had something that they were doing, feeding the hungry, encouraging people to vote. They did a lot of things other than out in the community marching and sitting in and demonstrating.
Yeah.
They encouraged people to get involved, and the people listened. And so we've got to figure out how to get that network back online, and and advocate for a rediscovery of our history, because if not, it's lost.
Yeah, but I think one of the problems that we have in the church is that everybody worry about the daggone 501c. They worry about that, and they don't realize it's a lot of things they can do, and they're not gonna lose their nonprofit status.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And we
not political; it's social.
Yeah, and they
So
don't
they get
understand
involved
that.
from a social standpoint and
Yeah,
not make it political.
yeah.
It's just it just broadens awareness for the
Mm-hmm.
strength of the church in our society,
Yeah.
and the reason that it needs to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't affect their 501c3 nonprofit status.
Yeah. But a lot of them don't know that. A lot of them don't know that. They be like, oh no, we can't do that. That's political. No, man, that's not political. But somebody's got to take the reins and start teaching your kids about who did what. They don't even realize how much stuff we have discovered, designed, and created here in this
Uh-huh.
country.
Well,
Every
people,
time,
yeah, you're
every
right.
time, every time I hear Magnum say, "Y'all need to go back to y'all where y'all came from."
Mhm.
Okay, I'll go back where I came from, but everything that I got a patent on that I discovered and made, I want us to be to take it back with you. And when
Uh,
we do take it back with you, this country is gonna cease to exist because you can't use it. You know,
yeah.
you're not smart enough to create stuff.
Mhm.
It's so much stuff we've done.
Well, when I hear that, I tell people, no, I don't feel like going back to North Carolina. But But on the other side of the coin, we talk about gentrification, and people talk as if gentrification is new. Gentrification started when the Dutch and the English and the Europeans came down into the dark continent of Africa
Mhm.
and beginning to infiltrate
Mhm.
those places and rob them of their natural resources, which was black people.
Mhm.
That's where gentrification began to take place,
Yeah.
and it brought you across the pond to the middle of passage, and brought you over to a country that didn't want you, didn't appreciate you. All they wanted was your the sweat of your labor.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand that in order for us to really to be able
Mhm.
to address that gentrification from Africa that took place in Africa to get us over here today, we need to understand what we need to do today to
Mhm.
make sure that we're part of the growth and development of this country in North America, and
Yeah.
not seen as an adversary or seen as a blight on the country, and all those things that people on TV portray us as.
Mhm.
I don't look at TV much anymore, other than news and weather, because I'm tired of looking at every time I look at at a TV station, we're cussing, we're killing, we're drug addicts, and we've been dragging through the cold.
Mhm.
We're abusing each other, and
Yeah.
it's all on every channel, every
Mhm.
story, and that's not who we are. So I know that we're running out of time, but it's
Mhm.
time for us to get back to our history and rediscover who we are and what made us the great people we are today.
Yeah. A viewer just popped on and want to know what do we need to do. We just need to come together and work together. We
Yeah,
get some things done. That's just the bottom line of it.
yeah,
Just the bottom line. But we're gonna be talking more
yeah,
offline.
yeah,
We got to get roll up our sleeves and get to work, take care of the
yeah.
communities and stuff. We got to do that. But for my viewers out there tonight, I appreciate y'all tuning in to the Urban Symptom Live Show. And my guest tonight was Dr. James Dula. Man, this dude has a lot of knowledge. You know, he's been a lot of places, and he's still doing a lot of things. You know, and we appreciate his service, and we appreciate what he does in his community to try to further his community. And the conversation is going to have to continue. You know, that's the only way we're going to get it done. You know, we can't just start a conversation and allow it to end. We just got to keep the conversation going until we can figure this thing out and get our young people on the right track. You know, regardless of what your ethnicity is, you know, you need to be on the right track. You need to understand, you know, about this country and what's going on with this country, how government operates, and what you can do and what we can do and what we can't do. Okay. And then one of the things we got to understand, we can't go ride them into another country and dictating to them what they're going to do and try to make them do it. You know, we can kind of pull back services from them, but we just can't go in there and say, look, this is what you're going to do, because we're the United States. Okay. And so it's a lot of work we got to do out there. And so the journey continues on, Dr. Dula.
Yes,
so I appreciate you being with us tonight, Dr. Dula. And like I said, we got to get back together pretty soon to talk more about what's going on. Until next week, next Tuesday night, again, be safe out there. Take care of yourself. Enjoy life. You know, you can go out and smell the roses now because it is springtime. Take care. Good night, Dr. Dula. Take care now.
Good night, Mr. Kearney. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure, sir.